You're watching the Matt to Matt Show, where we talk about... Excuse me.
Exactly 15 seconds, we'll be on the air.
Where we talk about everything that's important to you. From science and technology to pop culture and social commentary. Featuring your hosts Right Matt, Left Matt, and the disembodied voice of Joe. This is where the conversation begins. Now let's have a chat. Matt to Matt. Good evening. Welcome back to Matt. I am your host, Right Matt. Joining me as always is Left Matt.
What's up, guys?
And of course, in his posh library, the disembodied voice of Joe.
Good evening.
Who seems to have deadpanned right now. So, joining us this evening, first time is Matt Christiansen, YouTuber. You can find him on YouTube, Matt Christiansen, also on Twitter at ML Christiansen. We have it up, spelling of his last name, on the screen for your simplicity. How's it going?
I'm doing well. Thanks for hosting me. If you're left and right, what does that make me? Am I up, down? Which Matt am I?
Well, you know, that's interesting. I didn't even realize till today when I was naming the episode that I'm like, oh, dang, that's like our first really big guest, and it's like another Matt.
Alternate
so
right.
We're setting, yes, you're alternate right. Perfect. Thank you, Joe. You are alternate right, Matt. Read
Just
into
kidding.
that what you will.
Just kidding.
All right. Yeah. Joe's face is frozen right now. All right. Welcome to those of you who are joining us for the first time. We are a once a week Thursday nights show. Make sure you do subscribe. We have these conversations. We try to bring the chat in as often as possible so that we are talking not only with our wonderful guest, but also with you.
Be careful about anybody I may bring to the chat.
You know, I'm
you
looking.
might want to walk that back in a few minutes.
I'm saying, like I said, we try. You know, there's always the caveat. We do try to get to the chat. We'll see how that goes this evening. We do appreciate the people that did join us this evening to see Matt have a conversation with us. So it's been an interesting week. We're going to touch on the story of the week. No, we're not talking about Hugh Hefner because, to be perfectly honest, not to be callous, but I don't care. So we're going to be. I have nothing to say about that. It's a shame. It's a shame.
I share that opinion.
Well, it's a shame another human being died.
But he did such
philanthropy.
He's a guy that died.
Yeah.
What a good guy, you know?
Yeah, so that's all we're going to say about that topic this evening. We usually do quick news up top, but to utilize our time with Matt Christiansen best, we'll skip over that, and we're just going to go into our topics of the evening. Also going to be getting into the NFL situation is obviously what I was talking about. There was a lot of policy dropped in the last 24 hours or 48 hours, and I didn't get a chance to look into any of that, so we're not going to be discussing it this week. As far as the Trump's tax thing, and I think there was some other thing.
I'm sure there was.
I don't know.
News
That's
item.
what I'm saying. So real quick, I just wanted to frame this discussion we're having. We're trying to, as those of you who were listening in the intro, what we're trying to do is we're trying to have conversations with people where we may not agree on everything, but the contentious topics that come up that are extremely polarizing, and I'm sure you can agree the NFL situation with the hashtag take a knee is extremely polarizing. We're going to try and figure out how we can try to understand, maybe not agree with, but understand people who we disagree with. I forget who said it, but a sign of intelligence is to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. So that's what we're going to be doing, trying to entertain thoughts that...
Hooray for the First Amendment, right?
Hooray for the First Amendment. So real quick, I just wanted to start with those of you who don't know Matt Christiansen. Matt, how correct me if I'm wrong. Let me just frame this way. You voted for Obama, correct?
2 times, yeah.
2 times, okay, and then voted which way this election?
Donald Trump.
I was gonna say Donald Trump, but I didn't want to be wrong. I thought maybe you were one of those. I'm just gonna vote third party, or just vote down ticket.
Well, I think as my political outlook develops, I would love to be at home with the libertarians. I want to go home with them. I want to be with them. But they do things like nominate Gary Johnson.
Right.
And
Right.
so I
Bill
can't
Weld.
get on board with Gary Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
I'm available to the libertarians. That said, I don't regret my vote either, though. If the election were held again today, I would vote the same way, and I wouldn't hesitate.
Gotcha.
And that's not to say that I endorse everything that the president does. He annoys
What?
me probably half the time.
I thought a vote for a presidential candidate was an endorsement of everything they do and say.
That's the way it works.
Yeah,
That's
I
what I
mean,
hear.
if you when we talked about the NFL issue on our show this last Sunday, everything that's happened so far fits the classic template where Donald Trump originally says something that raises my eyebrow a bit. I don't really like it, but then the overreaction is so off base that I have to kind of default back to him because it is the more sane perspective, if only by default.
Well, and that's,
if only by comparison, he's the better choice.
well, that's like it's kind of what I was saying. Where when these things are so polarizing, what it ends up doing is either pulling people really hard to one side or the other, or leaving a lot of people in the middle, going like, "I just don't care anymore." Like I care, but I don't care as much as you do, or as much as you do. Not you. People on the left and people on the right, and then it just becomes frustrating because we get to sit and watch people argue. Like you said, it'd be great to be at home with the libertarians, but instead we get to watch 2 presidential candidates battle it out that aren't necessarily, my ideal candidate or yours. Speaking of which, I wanted to ask, I know the election's really old news, but I just wanted to ask, I haven't heard this from you before. If from all of the primary candidates on both sides, who would have been your ideal pick from like the beginning?
Oh man, that's actually a good question. I don't know that I've thought too much about that because I consider the ideas of Bernie Sanders to be very pie in the sky. That said, I have more respect for him than Hillary Clinton. So if I were to choose from the Democratic candidates, and what's his face? Martin O'Malley? Martin O'Malley is just a silly goose on a lot of gun issues.
He was a token other person. They were like, we need someone else.
Token other guy.
O'Malley,
exactly.
get on the
I like
stage.
that.
We need someone else to fill a podium. I
The
think
fact
during
that I was even able to remember him is
I'm impressed.
miraculous.
I did.
So
For a second, I was like, who is he talking about? I think
yeah.
there was.
So I guess I'm going to think about this in terms of who I would pick from each party. So Bernie Sanders, I would certainly prefer Bernie to Hillary. That doesn't mean that I want Bernie necessarily, but if I were picking from the two, that's who I would pick. If only for the fact that I considered him to be a more genuine, honest person. If it's not even a policy issue, it's just who do I trust more? It's Bernie Sanders over Hillary Clinton, which isn't a tough contest. In the Republican Party, the thing about, so I guess I have a choice between like Trump, Fiorina, Ted Cruz, who else was in it? Rubio.
Was Santorum
Rand
in it
Paul
at the
might
beginning?
be a good choice. Rand Paul might be a good choice. The thing about Ted Cruz too is Ted Cruz for me is not even a policy thing. It's just Ted Cruz always seems like he's trying to sell me a lemon car. Really aggressively, and I don't like it.
Shame.
So Ted's off my list. Rand Paul might be a leader, just because I can get with most of his libertarian perspective, I think. And if it's the libertarians, I generally like Gary Johnson's off the list for a number of reasons that I'll save the time and skip over. I do like Austin Peterson a lot. He loses me on border issues. And he's a pro-life libertarian. I'm not sure I'm all the way there on some of the pro-life issues. I don't know where I stand on the abortion issue conclusively, and that's part of the problem is I don't have a conclusive position. But I would say it's probably between Rand Paul and Austin Peterson if I could vote for any of the candidates who ran.
I would probably vote for Rand Paul if it was just any pick of anyone, simply because I think for me it just goes down to like the less stuff you'll do. Like obviously there's a lot of policy that needs to be changed or enacted or whatever, but the more hands off you can get with the government. I mean, the government only has a few functions, and it's
Does it?
yeah. Well, a few intended functions.
Okay.
So like as far as close back to that as we can get. Like you said with I think not to get too deep into this, but I think Rand Paul had a similar issue that Ted Cruz did, where there's something about his tone that came across as a little bit, he doesn't come across
good.
as a leader. Thank you. He doesn't come across so much as a leader you want to get behind. I mean, say what you want about Trump's rhetoric, but just the way he talks to people, way more compelling to way more people. Maybe a lower
That's
common
true.
denominator,
And
but
I think
compelling.
part of the problem libertarians have is the message they're trying to sell is, I'm not going to do anything and I'm going to leave you alone. And that doesn't lend itself to like compelling leadership necessarily, even though I think it's the message that people need to hear. I wish that there would be some cultural restoration of taking responsibility for your own life. That's not to say that government can't do anything. That's not to say that there's no role for society in fixing problems. But I do think culturally we've developed into a place where we look to the government or we look to other people to solve our problems for us. And I don't think that's necessarily good.
Gotcha. So not necessarily like a Ron Swanson.
Oh, you can't do movie references with me.
It's,
I don't
it's
watch
TV.
them.
I thought maybe Ron Swanson, severe libertarian, says so many times that government has no purpose and should be completely abolished. Anyway, so not necessarily that far, obviously, and I agree. And I'm sure the polarizing effect of such. Correct me if I'm wrong. We're only so old in this room and in this conversation, but it seems like both parties got so into more and more control, but in different ways. Yeah. So the Republicans used to be, the conservatives used to be about smaller government, same way the libertarians are these days. But it's just now it's more government, but in our direction rather than your direction, which sort of leaves a lot of people, like I said, in the middle of going, well, I don't like either of your ideas,
Yeah.
So like,
well, that's kind of why I was on board with the Democrats when I was younger, because when I was growing up and I was in high school, the Democrats were the anti-war party, and they were the marriage equality party, and they were the weed party. Some of them, like they were the people that thought you should be able to live the life that you want. Government, at least in the war context, which was the major context at the time, should be smaller. Maybe not in other areas. Certainly, the Democrats haven't had the greatest record on small government, but that was kind of the perspective that drew me in at the time. And now the party has morphed into the cultural authoritarians that I thought we were all fighting at the time, the people who want to control your every move, the people who want to tell you what's okay to watch and what's okay to read and what's okay to play in the video game, in your video games or entertainment or whatever else. Yeah. And it's repellent. I don't want anyone telling me what to do.
Yeah.
It's just, it's not a good message. I mean, you think of Hillary Clinton standing up there and with the basket of deplorables and the racists and the sexists and the xenophobes.
Yeah. I will guilt you into being on my side,
Yeah, sorry. I mean, how about we just let people do what they want and not label them and try to demonize them? And I wish I could pinpoint what happened with the Democrats, but the party that I thought I supported when I was young, to me, is not recognizable to what it is today.
Now, what if I could ask? After a term of Obama, did you think you were still getting that brand? I don't mean this like as an accusation, but did you feel like you were still getting that brand of liberalism from the Democratic Party, or was it more of just you weren't happy with any other options at that point?
No, actually, my change in perspective, I voted for him again in 2012, and to be honest, didn't have a lot of hesitation about it. When my perspective really changed was, it's honestly about a year and a half ago, like once the primaries were really heating up, and the distinct moment that I remember the most, because the number one issue for me and a lot of people similarly is free speech. We can disagree on any number of issues, but so long as you respect my right to offer my opinion, I respect yours. We don't try to shut each other down. That's how we find the best ideas. Now, what happened, the instance that really changed my perspective was Trump goes to Chicago and he has his campaign rally in Chicago, and the leftist protesters at the time shut it down through force and through kind of quasi-violent means, and the event never happened. And I remember seeing a lot of my friends and a lot of thought leaders on the left celebrating this and saying, oh, yeah, we shut down the Trump event. Great. We shut down his speech. And I'm thinking in my head, when did we become the people who thought it was cool to deplatform a political speech? I thought we were the free speech people. I thought we were the do what you want people. Now we're celebrating shutting down speech by force. And of course, it only got worse from there. That's the one that really opened my eyes to this. But then we had San Jose, and there was a terrible one in Orange County as well. I mean, it seemed like everywhere Trump went, there were these instances of violence, and then of course you had these college tours
San Jose
where Antifa grew and grew.
Was that the one with where they had a bunch of Mexican flags and they were waving them, saying "This is Mexico"?
Yeah, there was a bad one in Anaheim, I think it was, and then San Jose was the one where the woman got egged and they were stalking people outside. And there was it Anaheim or San Jose where the guy was actually beaten bloody, like a bloody face guy. And very few of people who I thought were my political allies were troubled by this. They thought it was kind of like ends justify the means. Like, we're shutting up Trump, so it's fine because he's the next coming of Hitler.
Which
it's
of
our
course
moral duty.
Evolved into the now punch a Nazi thing. I mean, it started that far back of, well, I mean, look who we are attacking. It's not like we would shut up somebody who has good things to say or even not evil things to say, but we're shutting down evil people, so it's okay. So for you, it wasn't necessarily what people were doing so much as the fact that it wasn't condemned by the leadership. Because
I would say it's both. I mean, I find the action to be in violation of probably the most important principle around which we've organized our society. But, when it happens, it's also up to the rest of us to say, well, no, we are violating that principle and we can't do it. I'm sure my political perspective has evolved on a lot of things, but one thing I have not changed my perspective on is the idea that you should be free to say what you want as long as you're not directly threatening anybody. Disagree with what you say, defend to the death your right to say it. And the firm idea that the best remedy to bad speech, the way to fix speech you don't like, is with better speech. You defeat ideas with ideas. And if those ideas that you hate are so terrible that you'd resort to violence to stop them, you could probably defeat them much more easily with just better ideas offered from yourself.
Yeah, last week we had my brother on the show, guest hosting, and he was talking about, from his perspective, the idea of punch a Nazi is so counterproductive. That he said, why isn't it like save a Nazi? Like, why don't we try and show these people? Because obviously most of them either are trolling and don't care or whatever, but some of them just don't understand. They've been misled, they've been indoctrinated or miseducated or whatever by whomever.
What?
Yes.
Is this Jared Taylor hour
Thank
now?
you. By whomever.
This is the white male hour, whatever.
White women. So these people aren't necessarily evil Nazis to their core. As Jordan Peterson says, pretty much any one of us under the wrong circumstances could find ourselves as a Nazi because they're human beings. You're not born this evil incarnate Nazi. So why isn't it approached as these people need help? They need ideological, or even just logical correction of, okay, you must not understand this. Let's try our best to see if we can't have that discourse, which of course with the violence, that's never going to happen. Speaking of,
in the chat, Sean Bird says, "Save a Nazi, we get Nazis to find Jesus." I think reform
exactly.
Nazi
Well, that was that's what he was saying. Get like Sarah McLachlan to do a commercial and be like, a bunch of Nazis slow mo with their little torches and
just sub Nazis in for the abused animals, the abused pets.
Exactly. For 7 cents a day, you can pay for a book so that these people can read some history. Speaking of who's Jared Taylor? Speaking of Jared Taylor, YouTube, demonetized his not demonetized, but put in limited what do they call that? Where a video can't be commented on.
I guess they call it limited state.
Yeah, in a limited
it's
state.
Basically it's still on YouTube, but it's stripped of every feature possible.
It won't pop up in sidebars. It won't pop up in a search engine. You have to actually look for it directly to find it. They put one of his older videos in that, and the views shot up like overnight, literally thousands of views the next day. Which it isn't helping the cause of don't listen to this man, don't look at this man. Whereas, like we mentioned last week on the show, Sargon had him on his podcast for like an hour and said, okay, tell me what it is you want to say, and I will tell you why you're wrong. And now, people can listen to counterpoint. Whereas when you disable
I
comments
haven't
under
seen
a
that
video,
one. I need to check that out.
it
That
was
actually
a
sounds
good
really
one.
interesting.
It was a good one because Sargon has done this weird thing lately. If you guys don't know, Sargon of Akkad, very intelligent, very well-read man, YouTuber, does some great, well-researched work. But he's been doing this thing lately where he's less combative with people he doesn't understand. I think he got suspended or permanently kicked off Twitter because he was interacting with white supremacists, saying, "Well, okay, hypothetically, play this out," kind of thing. And I don't know why, but they thought that was all the people he was talking to didn't get banned, but he did for for entertaining a thought without accepting it. But that's the idea of discourse where we can understand each other and then go, "Oh, okay, I was right. You're crazy." Or whatever, and you can pass that judgment having heard what the person actually thinks.
Yeah.
And then,
the truth of the matter is, for a lot of these alleged Nazis, I mean, the claim against them is, well, they're calling for genocide. I've actually never heard that. I've never heard any of them say that. Now, I'm not saying that it's impossible. To me, they have a lot of pie in the sky ideas about how to achieve racial segregation is basically what they're looking
absolutely.
for. But that's part of the trouble is if you can't accurately describe the position to which you're opposed, I don't really trust you to explain to me why it's a bad idea. If you can't characterize what it is that they're saying accurately in your criticism of it,
that's really good. I can do that in 4 letters. Nazi. It's very simple,
Well, yeah, I know, but it's like
that's the horrible cop out.
I'm with you insofar as the general principle that they're wrong. Like, I can get with you that far, but you're so terrible at explaining why, and actually militant in doing so, that on principle, people end up siding with them, and that's what's so frustrating. Is people will say, "Oh, I can't believe you support the Nazis," or I've had people accuse me of supporting the rights of Nazis, which is sort of a mind-blowing accusation.
Well,
to
there's
me,
human rights and
Nazis
there's Nazi
don't
rights.
have rights. I thought rights were universal.
Well, that's what happens when you start boxing rights into categories. It's not just human rights anymore; it's women's rights, it's gay rights.
Yeah.
Do I not have the not that? But do I not have the right to marry another man? I mean, do I have gay rights?
Not if you're Nazi. Then everything's out the door.
Okay.
And of course, Nazi is nebulous. It's not easily defined. It's just guy who, I don't know, anyone to the right of, I don't know, whoever. To the right of Bernie, I guess.
Yeah, well, to some people, absolutely. You brought up that specifically, white supremacists or white nationalists not calling for genocide. That was one of the most interesting parts of this conversation with Jared Taylor is, I don't endorse this correction, but it was an interesting correction because he said people think we want genocide. We don't want genocide. We just want natural flow of segregation and people to stop pushing diversity because nobody really wants that. And if we were left to our own devices, all the people of one color would go here and all the people of the other color would go there. And that's just what we want, which is,
that's funny.
I think it's silly and I don't agree with it at all, but it's far from kill all the people of color. It's still bad. I still disagree with it. But you want to kill people is a very different argument, and it's incorrect.
Yeah. And what you're describing is simply an opinion or a worldview that you don't like or with which you disagree. And as soon as you've boxed it there, then it is entirely indefensible to meet that with violence as a means to stop it. And that's why they don't. The reason they have to characterize it inaccurately is because that's the only way they can justify the ridiculous actions. That's the only way that you can go punch people well, I guess it's not indiscriminately. The only way you can punch them without being provoked, without having violence actually forced upon you, is if you believe that they're going to do that stuff. If you believe that they're loading people onto the trains right now or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you hear the rhetoric from people, and they say the atrocities that Trump is committing every day. Yeah. Who was it who said that? The head with ketchup lady, forget her name.
Kathy Griffin.
Oh yeah,
Kathy
that
Griffin,
was Kathy Griffin.
Who remembers her name?
Although
anyway?
To be fair, Sarah Huckabee Sanders also accused Jim Comey of atrocities. So atrocity is just an overused word.
Yeah, she probably heard Kathy Griffin use it and it just stuck in her brain, and she's like, atrocity. Yeah, that's a good word.
If nobody died, don't use the word atrocity. That's probably a good rule.
Yeah,
a rule of thumb to start with.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it's that lack of desire to understand. So on the note of desire to understand, let's move to the story of the week with the NFL situation.
Oh, buddy.
Oh,
Now-
boy. You're gonna
yeah.
make me try to understand the knee taking.
Now,
oh gosh.
Now let's like I said, let's just entertain the idea of why they feel the need to do this. Now, like you said, a lot of it unfortunately looks like, if it's not, but I don't know what's in these people's hearts, but a lot of it looks like just backlash, not to police brutality, but to Trump.
Yeah.
Saying that's ridiculous, these people should be fired. And of course they go, no, fine, we're all going to take the knee. And it's like, at that point, are you really doing this for the original intended purpose, or are you just doing this to be spiteful? And the original idea of let's raise awareness of these atrocities that are going on, which I'm not saying that lightly, I'm just reusing the word, of this police brutality that does happen at times. It seems to have gotten away from that, and it's no longer about that. It's about either you take a knee or support those who do, and you hate the troops, or you don't take a knee and you stop watching football and you hate people of color. So like that's how far it got from I want to raise awareness by taking a knee, and other people going, well, I think that's disrespectful, to you hate troops who die and you hate people of color who die. Like that was not the original conversation. So bringing that
your
back,
question. Sorry, go for it.
well, I was just saying, bringing that back from those extremes, which it seems like it's now at, to the original idea of I want to do this. It's my right to. You're allowed to do it. It's not consequence free. You are at your place of work when you're doing that, and people are allowed to disagree with it, boycott it, whatever. But from that to the opposing view of I think that's disrespectful to the flag. To what degree do you think you could go, okay, Colin Kaepernick, if you want to do that, I don't like it, but I'm still going to watch my set, turn on my TV set and watch the game, because nobody's making a big deal out of it. The only thing that's going on is out of the corner of my screen, there's a little tiny Colin Kaepernick, which isn't the case anymore. But back then, little Colin Kaepernick kneeling down bugs me a little, but then I go on to my game. Without the sportscasters feeling the need to, well, let's all do this together, and let's all not even come on the field, and let's bring it up during every announce or every halftime or pre-show or whatever. Without it blowing up to that degree, do you think you'd be not okay with it, but okay with it?
Yeah. Well, so this is a question I've been struggling with, because football is something I very much enjoy. I look forward to it all off season. I look forward to it every week for Sunday or Monday or whatever the day is going to be, because I want to have that 3-hour block and I want to watch the Vikings game. I want to turn off my political brain and I want to be entertained. And I think what you're describing and my position on this is the position that most people hold, which is you should have the right to take the knee, because you should have the right to do whatever form of nonviolent speech that you want. But it's also stupid speech. It's speech that's unpopular. It's speech people don't like.
So we shut
and
it
you
down.
might face consequences in your professional or social life for doing it because it's stupid speech. I think that's the common opinion, and I think you're right to say that there's been kind of a false dichotomy created where you have to either, I guess, hate the troops or say that there's no merit whatsoever to any claims about police brutality. But to your point on trying to understand, so I'm more on the Trump critic side of this, not on the they should be fired part of it. I'm more on the Trump critic side of this. To your question about how to understand where they come from, I like to think I'm decently good at that. At least I try to be. I try to be an understanding person, and I want to know. I want to understand a position with which I disagree, and I think that's very valuable to do. Part of the problem, and another one of my criticisms with this take a knee, is it is 100% incoherent. I don't even know what they're protesting anymore. As you described, it started out with Colin Kaepernick and police brutality. Now it's just a middle finger to Trump, as far as I gather, or just a general, like, I don't know, America sucks. I don't know. They say they're not doing it against the flag or the anthem, but it's like, explain to me why you are doing it then, so I can understand.
We need to get him on. We need to have him on the show then.
Yeah,
Would you like to talk to Colin?
Can you get a hold of Colin Kaepernick? I know he's not busy.
But that's the thing.
He's not doing
even
anything
part of it
these
now. It's the rest of these guys just doing this out of spite, and that's the problem. Is It's one thing to try to understand a position with which you disagree. It's another thing to guess. And at this point, I think we're guessing what it is that they're standing or not standing for.
Yeah, well, like I said,
Why should we have to?
It's,
They're
well,
the
it's
ones
departed.
protesting what?
It's so far departed from what it originally was. And speaking of which,
Yeah.
We're about to
entertaining
depart.
a thought. I've got a conspiracy theory about this.
Oh my.
Oh, good.
That
I like those.
because I was looking back, like in an attempt to understand Colin Kaepernick's mentality on this. I went back to the beginning, and when this started, and what he originally did was not take a knee; it was actually stay seated on the bench. So it was less of an active thing, more of a passive. I won't rise for the flag. And apparently, when it was first noticed, it was the third time he'd done it. So the first 2 preseason games, he wasn't even suited up, and he didn't stand for the flag, whatever. But he wasn't even in uniform. The third game, he was in uniform, didn't stand up for the flag. He didn't say anything about it. Nobody else said anything about it until somebody saw a picture of like the opening ceremonies or whatever, and just saw a little tiny guy sitting on the bench, and they contacted the owner and said, or the manager, I forget, coach, and they said, "Is one of your players sitting down? Is that what I see?" To know. Hey, good evening. We were shut down by those darn commies who did not want us, those darn NFL owners who did not want us recognizing the truth and spreading it. That's my conspiracy theory for the day.
The
about
bodiless voice, dude.
about my conspiracy theory.
I missed it all.
I know. I had a system-wide failure for some reason. That happens once a month for some. I don't know why. I don't know why. I've tried to troubleshoot, but for some reason the whole computer just.
Did this stream drop, or are we still live?
We are live again now, but the stream did drop. Are you there? Calling Christiansen.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay, cool.
there you go.
You went blank for a second. Oh, you were changing camera. That makes sense. All right, let's see if we can't get this popped back up. But as I was saying, while we try and get that going, are you seeing the shared screen over there? The monitor's still showing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Speaking of...
Wait, so you said you went back to the beginning? Colin.
Yes, Colin Kaepernick. It seems like it was an accident. It seems like he was not intentionally...
You think the whole take a knee was an accident?
Well, he didn't take a knee. He sat down. And that was the third game, and he had yet to stand up off the bench the whole game.
No,
So I think he just forgot about the one time in a game he's allowed to stand up off the bench. He's just used to sitting there the whole time. So that's...
But then you think he politicized it when he was asked about it? Or,
yeah, why would you disrespect the flag? Because his answer was a bit vague. His answer was... because of the way people are treated, the way people of color are treated in this country. Nothing specific, not like Tamir Rice or who's the other person around that time. It wasn't anything specific. It was, why would I stand for that flag? It oppresses black people, which it seemed like a catch-all answer. And I'm not taking a side either way.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to argue that point or not. But it just seems like a catch-all.
And he just kind of
answer.
fell into it.
Yeah.
And of course, he was at a time of declining relevance in his career.
But like I said, he didn't initially do that. Like, he didn't even try to make a big deal of it. Like, taking a knee kind of is demonstrative. Just kind of hiding there on the bench, half covered with a Gatorade cooler, isn't really making a protest so much.
It's not a big scene, and it wouldn't be particularly effective. It's certainly not a message that people would understand.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I'm just saying. It seems like it was just a convenient excuse for... I don't know why I can't get you back on my screen.
Well, that's even worse. Like, if that's true, and let's play it out, I guess. He's sitting on the bench. Some reporter guy asks him, hey, why are you sitting on the bench? Why wouldn't you stand for the flag? And his response, quick in his head, is, well, why would I stand for that flag?
Yeah.
That's a flag that oppresses people or whatever. That's arguably worse, because then it's just a knee-jerk I hate America answer. Generally, I hate America answer that's not even well thought out.
Yeah, like I said, if you go back and you look, it seems there's a possibility. There's evidence leaning in that direction that's plausible. Yeah, I'm not saying it's true, but looking back, that was the first thing that struck me of, well, this is a really poorly played out protest. The third game you did this, someone had to ask your manager, who gave a public response for no particular reason, saying, well, he did sit. And they're like, why? I don't know, talk to him. So and obviously it didn't even go much of anywhere at the time. Like, it wasn't like what we're seeing now happened then. Goodness, why are you not on screen?
Is my video feed's going through though? It's not anything on my end, right?
Well, I'm seeing you. Oh yeah, no, you're fine. But for some reason, OBS is being unkind and is not letting me see you. So one second, let me.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, what do you think about that? Does that sound absolutely implausible? Oh, that's the problem.
Well, to be honest, at this point, I think it's somewhat of a distinction without a difference, to be honest. I don't mean to say that to dismiss it entirely. What I mean is that the what we're seeing today, what's going on last week and presumably onward in the NFL is, as far as I can tell, pretty much entirely unrelated to Kaepernick or the concept of police brutality. So even if all of that was some sort of accidental protest, it would be relevant only insofar as it prompted Trump to say what he did. I don't think it's relevant to what these players are doing today, because they're just reacting to Trump. Yeah.
Like I said, it starts with one thing and then it flowers out to something that's completely different. But I thought I'd share. I know you kind of have a thing for conspiracy theories that main screen, small screen display capture. All right. Well, I'm sorry. I am trying to get you back on the screen, and that's why I'm kind of.
I have a little blurb I can read while we're waiting.
All right, let's hear it.
What do you got?
So these couple people who did talk to Colin.
Oh,
Kaepernick.
really?
But this is something that's been quoted in a couple articles. I'll just this guy, I think his name is Reed, said, I approached Colin the Saturday before our next game to discuss how I could get involved with the cause, but also how we can make a more powerful and positive impact on the social justice movement. So I guess this is in between just sitting down versus kneeling. This is before the kneeling. He said, we spoke at length about many of the issues that face our community, including systemic oppression against people of color, police brutality, and the criminal justice system. We also discussed how we could use our platform provided to us by being professional athletes in the NFL to speak for those who are voiceless. After hours of careful consideration, even a visit from Nate Boyer, a retired Green Beret and former NFL player, we came to the conclusion that we should kneel rather than sit the next day during the anthem as a peaceful protest. We chose to kneel because it's a respectful gesture. I remember thinking our posture was like a flag flown at half-mast to mark a tragedy. It baffles me that our protest is still being misconstrued as disrespectful to the country, flag, and military personnel. We chose it because it's exactly the opposite. It has also been my understanding that the brave men and women who fought and died for our country did so to ensure that we could live in a fair and free society, which includes the right to speak out and protest. So
Interesting.
That kind of struck me.
Now, well, viewed in that light, what does that make you think of as far as his attempt to make this less uncomfortable for other people while still trying to champion the cause he is? So, like he said, well, you know what, kneeling might not be appropriate.
So, as far as
sitting might not be appropriate. So maybe we should kneel. That way, less people will be offended. Is what it sounds like. He's not necessarily.
Well, we can all agree that kneeling is less disrespectful than sitting down.
Oh yeah,
right.
Certainly less disrespectful than
by
stretching.
comparison now, like with LaShawn McCoy doing the stretching routine during the anthem.
That was
never go full LaShawn, because that's the one that actually pissed me off. Like Colin Kaepernick is just a nuisance, but it doesn't really bother me. The one that actually pissed me off was LaShawn McCoy.
Yeah, well, yeah. At that point, like I said, at that point, it's spreading out into something that's far more. just intentionally inflammatory.
Yeah.
Properties. This is, of course, something. It's not the Matt to Matt show if something technical doesn't go horribly wrong. And we're getting since we have
I've been there, man.
Since we have a big guest, we're getting a double whammy: total system shutdown, and now our guest is no longer with us.
For a few weeks in a row, OBS was crashing on me, but then it fixed itself. I guess I haven't had the.
Did you get the? Was it the update? Did you like get an update that fixed it or something? Because that might.
I don't know if it did. It updated in the background because I didn't do anything.
Oh, yeah. It doesn't do that. So maybe not. Maybe it's just.
Yeah.
Maybe
it just fixed itself.
Yeah, but that's freeware for you.
Yeah.
Let me try that one more time. Goodness gracious. All right, well, let's try this then. Nope. All right. Well then. Let's see. Let's see, we got about 15 or so minutes left. I had a
Constantine says better than my guest appearance.
Yes. Oh my goodness. We had Constantine on during our last season.
Oh yeah.
And it was we brought him in like half hour before the show. He was chilling in Skype, just waiting, and then it randomly dropped the call before we even brought him on. And then it like kept dropping him, or he would call, and we'd click answer, and it would disappear. So like every 3 minutes.
Well, I'm
like
going to blame
minutes,
Constantine's internet connection.
I've
Whenever
heard.
he calls the call-in show,
heard.
it's always a struggle. We need to start a GoFundMe for better
I think
internet.
he's like
for
on a cell phone
Constantine.
in a Walmart or something, shopping for marshmallows. He's just like, oh, hey, I'm on. All right, well, hold on.
Yeah.
I don't know, or maybe driving in a convertible. Yeah. It's. I mean, speaking of Constantine, since he's in the chat, and we can just talk crap on him. How about those geopolitical questions?
Oh my!
I have to say, he certainly has a lot. He's, I don't know, well read. He has a lot of opinions about those things that that's a blind spot for me as far as my knowledge.
Yeah, I mostly have to punt because it's not.
That's well said.
It's not that I don't find interest in those things. It's just it's not the things to which I pay the most attention. So I have a very casual opinion on some of these things, but I will acknowledge that it is very casual and it's not the most well-informed take.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than pretending you know what you're talking about.
No, it's a trap. You don't want to do that. And I think when people are in a format like this where there's an audience, you, for whatever reason, you get a temptation to act like you know things that you don't. And if I were ever to give a tip to someone who wanted to start doing something similar, beyond how to do things production-wise, my number one tip would be don't pretend to know things that you don't, because there's no quicker way to end up looking really dumb in front of an audience than doing that. And I don't know anyone who gets pissed off when you say, you know what, that's not a subject or a topic on which I've spent the most time thinking or about which I've read the most. Here's my kind of gut reaction, but I'm going to be clear with you that it's kind of a gut reaction. Nobody gets pissed off. You don't embarrass yourself from doing that. So I would definitely advise, don't pretend to know things. It's not good.
That's speaking of not good. That's not good. I don't know if you can see. Oh, I'm not even sharing my screen with you anymore, or am I? That's all right.
No, it's just on your avatar.
Yeah.
But that's fine. It doesn't matter.
We are pressing forward. All right. So I had a couple questions while we still have time for you that are a little less serious, and just to put a cap on that. I think I'd be able to understand a lot more. And like I said, given the attitude of, well, sitting is more disrespectful, so let's kneel. Let's see if we can, make our point and try and make it less offensive. It sounds like that was the goal with that change. So it seems like less of a intentionally. Wow, this is getting serious. It's Picasso on the screen right now. I don't know if you're watching the stream, but it is.
No, I don't have the stream open.
Okay, good. Transition. Wow, it is.
Wouldn't want to inflate the numbers.
Seriously, all the boxes went different sizes and shapes and everything. So.
Oh boy.
But I think I have you back for these last couple questions for a couple of minutes. That's good. All right.
Which are
to start? If you could pick someone who's a political commentary for president, I think I know your answer, but if you could pick somebody, to just, boom.
You probably do.
It's Cenk Uygur, right?
Yeah. Well, no.
That's
If you want to make the serious guess, you could probably.
Oh no,
peg
of course,
this one.
of course. It's Ben Shapiro.
Wait.
Yeah,
I mean,
and not
he has-
because I agree with him on everything, but
He
because
has the same
I think
credentials.
he's a well-intentioned,
Never mind.
intelligent person who is very clear on his principles.
Mhm.
And you know, I don't have to agree with every principle that a person has, but if I know the principles on which you're going to base your judgments, and I can kind of predict how you'll go, yeah, that's good enough for me. And I agree with him on enough things that I'd be satisfied with that. So, but maybe I guess that's kind of predictable. So who would I pick?
Yeah, I was going to say
the wild card honorable mention. Can I go with Styx?
Sticks.
I think
Sticks,
I-
Hex, and Hammer.
Well, I can certainly, you know, Sticks, Hex, and Hammer, right?
666.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually were browsing some of his videos before this. Yeah, because of his, it just for me, I can see why you would think that, just because of his hands-off approach. You know, his libertarian. It's hard to disagree with, you know, like nothing. You know, we should do something. No, I'm just saying, like,
Bold
we should do
statements.
something about that. Okay, let's all as a community do something about that. We should help the poor. Let's help the poor. Let's just let the government stay out of it. They suck at it, you know. Or we should, yeah, whatever other thing I can't think of right now. Don't want to get too into. But yeah, I can totally agree with with Sticks. I would vote for Sticks. I would probably, my top pick right now would probably be Joe Rogan. And
Ooh,
let me explain why.
That surprises me, kind of.
A lot of people get bothered by this, but he has a habit of, I wouldn't say changing his mind, but developing his understanding and his opinion. A lot in politics, that's usually seen as a flip flop. But I've seen, you know, he has guests on that teach him new things, and he goes, "Oh, well, that's interesting. I never thought of it that way." Rather than, "No, you're wrong." Unless, of course, it's Steven Crowder and they're talking about pot. Then he digs his heels in, and it becomes awkward for a half hour. But yeah, he has sort of a thought of, well, let's just understand each other. I mean, the whole. If you guys don't know, Joe Rogan he used to be an actor, and he kind of still is, but he's a UFC commentator. But he does one of the most
Used to make
successful.
people eat spiders.
Yeah, that's what that was like.
NBC.
That's what he used to do. Fear Factor. But he has one of the most successful podcasts because he has an extremely interesting guests. They talk for about 3 hours. People from all over. He had Ben Shapiro. He had Cenk Uygur. He has pretty much any celebrity of any kind you can think of.
He had Jenk. When was that?
years ago. He had.
I need to watch that
He
one.
had Anna Kasparian. Anna Kasparian. Yeah. He had her on.
Was it like a million years ago? Because maybe it was before I was
It
clued
was
into
like
his show.
400. I was
like
gonna say 500.
$4.99.
It's
$4.99,
$4.99.
yeah.
That's how long ago it was. He's
So
like
we're talking like 2 years ago, maybe this happened.
Well, 3 years.
three,
Yeah.
but yeah, a while ago.
3 years ago.
So-
Okay.
Yeah. As some people would say, back when Cenk Uygur was sane, but if you ask Steven Crowder, Cenk Uygur was never sane. We just never saw it. So
I think you're kind of right about that, but that's probably for another topic. For
he
another
made it.
time.
He made a compelling case. Go watch his video. Speaking of which,
He did.
Speaking of which, I was really sad because I saw Steven Crowder post his thing today about their show tonight, which airs an hour before ours, and so I'm doing show prep and I don't get to see his show live. But it was a big Antifa undercover sting that him and Nake Jared did, and
Yeah.
showing that. I can't wait to watch that.
That should be good. I'm looking forward to seeing that.
All right, so one last question before we let you go, and I appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate you trying to entertain ideas that are less comfortable than normal, but. You know, like I said, the idea of understanding other people is something that is lacked greatly in today's discourse.
Yeah, I just draw the line at Nazis. You know, that's the very clear line.
Well,
I'll never try to
it's-
understand
it's-
them.
I'll meet
But
you in
anyone
the middle.
else?
Well, people talk about relations, and let me just get this one point out. I wanted to.
Yeah, sure.
So people talk about relations, and I've listened to a lot of Jordan Peterson talking about any sort of interpersonal relations, and you talk about like race relations and like a left versus right and things like that, and it's not approached from a healthy perspective. Like if this was a marriage, never gonna work. Headlines like "Until white people know what it's like to not have emojis of their color, we should ban all white emojis." Like I'm
It's
uncomfortable, so you need to know what I feel like and be uncomfortable. Like that's a spiteful girlfriend who's like, you cheat on me, I'll cheat on you, and it's like, do you not want this to work? Like, like if mistakes are made, let's try and work on correcting and moving forward. So,
Yeah.
So that's something that doesn't really. That's not people aren't interested in that politically, and I want to try and bring that back to into style. Quick question: We're gonna play a quick game, and I'm gonna ask the chat about this too. I need everyone's answer so we can take a poll. This is Matt's favorite question. I posed this to him earlier.
Doozy.
Right, left, Matt. This is a game of political would you rather. So I hope I can explain this concisely. Would you rather have the human being with the choices, decisions, and history of Hillary Clinton pushing Trump's agenda, such as the wall, repeal and replace, no amnesty, those kinds of things, would you have voted for a Hillary Clinton with Trump's agenda or a Trump, grab him by the crotch, his business practices or whatever, with Hillary's agenda? Would you be voting more for policy or personal?
I'm gonna vote for policy on that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was
it's unfortunate.
Matt,
And that was quick, Matt. Good
which
job.
would be what?
So I would vote for the Trump, the Hillary who would build a wall.
Hillary.
Wow,
So the wall
that's
is more
exactly,
important than I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but like a criminal who may or may not have done illegal activity with her email server in her basement. That's less
Right? Yeah,
important than building a wall.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That I get right. So all we're doing is we're just taking Trump and putting Hillary in that suit. But other than that, it's Trump.
It's Hillary's mistakes, Hillary's life. She did whatever it is she did to cover up for Bill Clinton.
It is actually Hillary. I think I understand now.
Yeah. So would you put up with her?
I'd still
as
vote
a
on.
person?
I'd still vote on policy.
Okay. Well, that's smart. But I only thought of that because during the election, a lot of it was, well, do you know what she did? Do you know her past? Trump, do you know his business practices? How are you going to vote for a guy like that? There was a lot less talk of policy. So I was just curious. I would have a really hard time voting for a Hillary Clinton. The opinion I have of her personal life and her ethics, even if she promised, and I knew for sure she was going to build a wall and no amnesty and repeal and replace, like those kinds of things.
To some extent, it's hard to separate those things too, because do I get like a huge thing that attracted me to Trump and still does isn't necessarily policy, but it's cultural. Like I like his cultural middle finger to political correctness. Do I get that with the Hillary Trump?
No, so you get deadpan, horrible speaking, non-persuasive Hillary trying to.
So when you're talking about policy, you're talking like strictly what Congress and the president can do.
Yeah, like what they campaigned on, not who they are.
Okay, so
What a question.
this Trump would be
I know.
offended by. This Trump would be easily offended, but would build a wall. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, it would. Well, yeah. Like I said, this gets a little complicated, but essentially, it's a crass businessman named Trump with questionable hair and questionable ethics who wants to. I don't even remember Hillary's policies. Who wants to whatever it is she wanted to do?
Raise the minimum wage.
Single
probably.
payer, raise the minimum wage.
No single payer, yeah.
Yeah, things like that. But he still does the middle finger to the press kind of thing. But he's going to enact executive orders.
Boy, because I don't want to let go of that. That's honestly, it is a major asset to me that Trump is a cultural correction. So if I have to lose that, then that does weigh into my judgment a little bit. But
yeah, I was going to ask Blonde this last night, but I went something else. But because
she would just say whoever builds the wall. I mean,
yeah, that okay.
She'd put up with anything.
That is
true.
true. That's probably an easy catch. I'm just scanning real quick to see in the chat. There's nobody's answering that question. They're just arguing. They're arguing policy.
Constantine said Gary Johnson with Jill Stein's policies.
Gary Johnson without the tongue.
There's not that much distinction. They were kind of the same person in some ways.
Yeah.
Remember when Gary Johnson got all triggered about calling them illegal aliens or whatever it was?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, what an election cycle. Looking back now, we can.
And they both are all about, they both. I'm sure they both smoke a lot of weed, to be honest.
Well, isn't that sort of like the
We
libertarian?
know Gary Johnson does.
Is that the top of the libertarians' platform?
It seems to be the top.
First and
platform.
foremost.
Oh my.
You think your contraceptive should be free? Well, I'll tell you what you get for free. All right, let's go ahead and roll this. You guys can find
Word of the day.
word of the day. Oh no, I was gonna run off without word of the day. I'm trying to be respectful of Matt's time.
Well, I don't-
Do we?
No, if you got I got a couple. I mean, we lost a couple minutes to the freeze, so
did.
I don't mind hanging out
We
for.
did. That is
There you
true.
go.
I don't know
All
what the word of the day segment is, but if
Well,
it's,
Matt is quite learned. He's in school right now.
That's enough. That's enough.
So he brings up these interesting words like vituperative,
not a
and
social
so we can
justice
educate
warrior, I
ourselves and be
promise.
more eloquent. Go ahead.
That's it. I just like sharing words.
Yeah, but what's the word?
Here's
of
the
day?
word: apotheosis.
A what now?
Apotheosis. It's in my Facebook. It's in the Facebook message I sent. I guess Joe can pull it up maybe, but sorry, I'm not speaking very loudly. Apotheosis is
What does it mean?
the highest point in the development of something, culmination or climax, or the elevation of someone to divine status or deification.
Okay, all right. So okay.
This is the apotheosis of our show
of our
so
show
far.
So
having
far,
Matt Christiansen
this
on
is
here.
our. And on that wonderful note, thanks so much for stopping by our show. That is our show for the evening. You can find Matt Christiansen on YouTube, Matt Christiansen, on Twitter at ML Christiansen, and support his. Wow, that is loud. Support his Patreon, which I don't have linked below, but I do have his YouTube link below, and he does have that listed there. Support him on Patreon, and you can be part of his Wednesday night call-in show, which I do and I am. So check him out. Wonderful videos. Thanks so much to those of you who followed him over here and those people who joined us for the first time. I appreciate your patience with us this evening. We will be back next week with another show, Thursday nights, 9. Ooh, hold on. I never have this ready. All right, see you guys next week.
Adios.